Here we go. Yay! Hello, everybody. I know this is the Time to Shine Happiness Show, and we are so happy to be here. I know we're a little bit tad late, but you know what? We always say, even though the show must go on, and we want to make sure that we give you value today because we are the happiest show. So, with that
Yes.
said, I want to introduce my other the
The
BBs. as we
BBs.
say.
Yes. Yes. Hi, I'm Barbara Ellison, and I am your personality pro because personality drives reality. And for myself, I'm on a mission to make happiness the norm rather than the exception. And we need to teach the world how to live happy, healthy, financially free, abundant lives. And that's what Barb and I are all about. But the thing is that we all do it in slightly different ways, which is what makes, number one, the world go around, because we all see things slightly different. So I am so excited to have our special guest on, Susan Billington. And Susan and I met, quite a while ago, and just had a great conversation. And you know me, when I have a great conversation with somebody, my first thing is, let's get you on our show. So here we are. So Susan, tell us about you. What are you excited about right now?
I am excited that I've come into my own. I know finally after 60 years of who I am. And that excites me. And I am thrilled to be in a position where I can start helping others before they reach 60 to figure out who they are and what their purpose in life is.
Right.
Well,
right.
Susan, you have you have an awesome, I read your bio and got to know you through Barbara. Please give them some of that, that gift and genius that you went through to get to where you are now, because you're amazing. You're amazing.
Well, it started with actually finally listening to my gut. For so many years, you kind of just let that chatter tell you that what your gut is telling you is wrong. So my journey to truly healing started just about 2.5 years ago. And it was a awakening to me because I thought I had dealt with my past. I thought I had done everything right, but I was missing the component that the mind, the body, and the soul all have to work together. You cannot just do one and expect to heal. You can't just, and that was part of what I was doing, was I was concentrating on the nutrition and the exercise and forgetting the component of the emotional. And so when I started with my cancer over 20 years ago, when somebody said that it was emotional, I was like, you are nuts. You are blaming me. And I totally shut down from that reality. I thought I'm doing the nutrition and the exercise. I don't know why I got cancer. And it wasn't until it returned 19 years later that it was like a ton of bricks. It was like a light bulb went off and it said, this is emotional. You haven't dealt with the emotions from your past. And that's when I started the healing process. And it was like all these doors started opening for me that I couldn't even imagine. And every time my mind would say, nope, you can't do that. You're not worthy. You're not this, you're not that. You can't. I would just take a deep breath. And my gut would say, you can do this. And I would move forward. So I have, even with this show, this is my first live. And it was a deep breath, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 from Robin Roberts, and move ahead.
Well, it's amazing, Susan, because I call ourselves cancer conquerors instead of survivors. I had a uterus cancer and I had to have a hysterectomy done quickly. because I got in denial. And by the time I got back to the doctor and everything, it was getting to the point where they said, we have to do something now. And they had to basically rush me to the hospital emergency and then do a whole hysterectomy on me. Just thank God it didn't get into my lymph nodes because it would have spread it real quickly. So I understand, but with you 3 times, and I was like, oh my God, she's like a cancer conqueror to the superpower. And it's just something about, when something like that happens in our lives, we can make a decision. And you made a decision to say, you know what, this sucks. We get in our emotions, I hate this, but I can either be the victim and be like, you know what, I'm just going to or say, I'm going to, move forward and do the journey that you did and become this awesome coach and helping others. And that's what it's all about. So I commend you.
Well, thank you.
Yes.
Yeah, it was like I said, it was a rude awakening when I realized the emotional part, of the healing was a big component. And the first time, I talk about listening to my gut. The first time when I first felt the lump, I knew immediately that it was cancer. But my mom had gone through colon cancer and she had gone through breast cancer. So immediately the back of my head is saying, you're nuts. It's nothing, you're just making too much of it because of your mother's history and whatnot. And yet my gut was still saying that it was cancer. And I just ignored it. And I waited a year. And then I went in for my first mammogram and they did the ultrasound. And I remember standing in the kitchen opening the letter that said, everything was negative. You're good for a year. My husband was standing there and I just cried into his chest and I said, they're wrong. They're wrong. That's when I really knew that my gut was, was spot on. And I said, I can't wait a year. I have to 6 months. 6 months, I have to go back and get this checked. Well, life takes hold. 6 months came, 6 months went. So it was another year. And they had one of those mobile mammogram vans coming through town. We lived in a very small town. And I went there. When I filled out the paperwork, they said, you're feeling something, you need to go see a doctor. So I went in to see the doctor and they found a lump in the other breast as well, which was a separate cancer. So I ended up with bilateral breast cancer with lymph node involvement. But it was like a whirlwind from the time that the doctor saw me and they took action immediately. I didn't have time to really think about it. It was like, see the doctor, next day go in and get the biopsy. And that was on a Friday. On Monday, they had me talking to the surgeon, or they recommended I talk to the surgeon. Saw him the following Friday because my husband was out of town and I didn't want to go. He's my support system. I didn't want to go without him. Following Monday, I was in surgery. And they kept me for 2 days. And I went home. And like I said, then I just continued on my journey to nutrition and exercise. And, I'm not a very big person. So, every time they'd come up with reasons why you get breast cancer, it's like, it didn't fit that mold. It didn't fit that mold. So what was it, and that's when I was told it was emotional. And I was like, I'm happy. I didn't realize that the emotion extended, way back.
Yeah.
And like I said, it wasn't until it came back that was the missing component. That was the catalyst to my healing. Once that hit me, that's what it was. So, and I did all of the affirmations all my life. I'm trying to boost myself up, and they say you have to forgive so you can heal. And now that I've been through all this, I think the opposite is true. I think you have to start healing before you can forgive. And you have to start healing before all those affirmations will stick with you, because we resonate with them when we say, oh yeah, that it should be that way. But then we go about our life. And then until you start healing and realizing where you are, those affirmations are really not going to mean that much to you, and that they're not going to stick with you.
That's
And
true.
so I think the first thing that I try to show people is you have to first acknowledge your emotions.
Mm.
You know, sometimes, especially if you're a trauma victim, is you try to hide it. And people don't realize that everything that ever happens in our lives is in our subconscious.
Mm.
And it has to come out sometime. And you know, if you don't address it, it can be a chronic illness. You know, and it can be anything, all these aches and pains, and we say it's our age. When a lot of times it's the trapped emotions trying to show their way out. Your body is talking to you. It's like when you have stress and your shoulders hurt, you know? So if stress alone can do that, imagine what all of the emotions that you've been keeping inside can do to your body.
Wow. That I never thought of it like that. Where, like you said, you feel like because, like you said, we're all getting older and aging. So you
Uh-huh.
said, "Oh, that's just age. That's why my back or whatever." But
Mhm.
if you really, it's really interesting how you said, Susan, that if you don't really take a hold at those emotional things, that can bring about things physically in your body.
Mhm. Mhm. Mhm.
Wow.
Yeah, and then once you acknowledge it, then you need validation, and you have to validate it. You know that you have every right to feel those emotions. You have every right to, no matter what happened to you, especially as a child, you were in a survival mode. You're not responsible for anything that happened. You did whatever you could do to survive it. You know, I just had a conversation with my sister the other day, and she said, "I am so sorry. I didn't protect you." You know, she said, "I should have known." And I'm like, I don't blame you. You know, you were in a survival mode. You had to do what you had to do. You were not responsible for me, you know. So yeah. So a lot of so I continued after I realized this with I went to a 3-week retreat that really helped to detoxify the mind and the body and the soul. And the soul, you know, if you don't believe in God, that's fine. But when we talk spirit, it's just getting inside yourself and knowing inside yourself and having that calmness within yourself. So yeah.
I'm glad that when you talked to your sister and she felt so bad because she's your sister and she wanted to make sure she's like, Dad, I really was, and you just told her, you said, you know what? No, I don't want you. You made sure that she wasn't holding any kind of guilt
Hmm.
or anything, so that released her. So that was so even with you going through everything, you basically said, you know what? I don't want my sister to be feeling guilty about this, so I had to let her know it's okay. You,
Right.
you had to do what you had to do, and I love you.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. 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 And you know, and a lot of times, and you say you forgive, but sometimes that's just words. So if you're still harboring any of the anger, or you're still harboring any emotion attached to that person or that thing or whatever the situation was, you haven't truly forgiven yet, and you still have work to do um, within yourself to get to that point where you can truly forgive and love the person. Yeah.
One of the things for me, I just did a couple of weeks ago, I did a process about childhood because
Hmm.
things happen to us as kids that we have no reference to process them. So
Right.
it just goes in. But looking back, we can say, oh, yeah, well, I was like, hey, Debbie, if you're listening, I can look back on some times where I practically hated her because I thought in my mind she was getting all the attention
Hmm.
and it was jumping over me and hitting her. And I'm going to tell on myself. One time we had two dolls that were almost identical, and I was mad at Debbie for heaven knows what. mad at Debbie. And I took a magic marker when magic markers first came out, and I wrote on what I thought was her doll. But you know what? It turned out to be my doll. So not only was I mad at Debbie because of what she did first, then I was mad at myself because when I retaliated against Debbie, it hit me.
It just went right around.
It just went right around.
Wow.
So, but isn't that exactly what happens? And I can look back on that now and laugh about it.
Mm-hmm.
But you know what? Don't we as adults do that exact same thing?
Oh, yeah.
Once in a while, we just get so upset that somebody did X. Well, so then we're going to get back at them for doing X. And then it comes back on us as something worse.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Duh.
It goes with the whole saying, you know, when you're angry with someone, a lot of times they don't even know it, or they don't even know why, and they don't even care. So all you're doing is hurting yourself by harboring all of that inside, you know, and you have to let it out. I think journaling is one of the best tools. That's like the first thing in my toolbox is to journal and just release all of that emotion.
One time I was doing that, a friend of mine had said, I was angry, I was furious about something. And it wasn't even really, but it just totally hit my emotions. And she said, Barb, just write it down. And I remember I was so angry. And as I was writing it, I couldn't even tell you what I was writing. I went back to look at it afterwards, couldn't read it, couldn't read the writing. But I was so mad, I ripped the paper because I was just... But you know what? Afterwards, it was like, oh, and it was gone because it was out of my body. And that's one of the things that I share with my clients is that when you have some big emotion, like a gal that I know right now, she just went through a horrendous trauma at work of something that happened, and she saw some horrible things that happened. It was an accident. And she was sitting there one day, and I just said, you know what, Kim, write it down. Write down everything you're feeling, everything you saw, everything that everybody said, because you've got to get it out of your body. And it is such a powerful exercise. Get it out of your body.
And you don't have to be able to read it. I mean, because I grew up being told, don't ever write anything down that you don't want somebody to read. Don't ever tell anybody a secret you don't want to be retold.
Right.
So with that, it was very difficult when they told me to start journaling. I was like, I can't write that stuff down.
Yeah.
And I learned it was just the act of the movement with the pen on the paper and your mind telling you what you're writing. And it didn't even matter that it's just scribble.
Oh, scribble.
You know?
Totally didn't make sense. Totally did not make sense.
I love journaling. Yeah. That's my safe haven is journaling. I just love to do that. And I was like, you said, the first people be like, don't write nothing down that, no, don't do that. So I was like, well, then when I got older, I started journaling. I was like, but I need to get it out. I said, you know what, forget this. Because, when you're young and people tell you, you're thinking, okay, I can't do this. But I got older. I said, you know what? I was looking around like, okay, no one's around to tell me not to do this anymore.
I know, right?
So I think I can do this now.
One of the things that I have realized that has journaling, I just write it down. And of course, your brain is always saying, well, what are people going to think if they read it? Well, by the time somebody's going to read my journal, I'm going to be dead. So who cares? Write it down.
And then Barbara, they'll make a movie out of it. They'll make a movie out of it.
Exactly. Because I am going to be or else I'm going to be 100 years old, and something that happened when I was 12, yeah. So,
and hopefully it helps somebody, Barbara, like you said, that's what we write, that's the reason why we do it. Yeah. So
because one of the things I just heard the other day from my pastor's wife, and she said, people, what you have to realize is that there is nothing new under the sun. It's in the Bible. It's in King Solomon. There's nothing new under the sun. So anything that you are feeling is not new. Someone else, somewhere, somehow, sometime has felt what you're feeling right now. So yeah, just share it, because you know what? Somebody else, the next time, somebody else is going to benefit from what you're feeling now, because how you respond to it can be very different. Like there's three of us on this panel right at this second, but you know, if you gave us one statement, we would all say something different about that statement.
Right.
And learn
Right.
something different, yeah.
And we would learn something different. So yeah, absolutely.
Right.
But Susan, I know you have like 7 steps that you have towards journey. Can you share that with the listeners?
But I didn't even write them down. Well, the first one is to acknowledge the emotions, and you don't have to. I don't believe, for me, that you have to relive your past. You don't have to. You don't have to remember all of it, especially with sexually abused children. We tend to forget a lot of the details, and a lot will really beat themselves up for not remembering. But I feel like it's not important. I know what happened. I know some of the details, probably more than I care to know. Mine was with my dad. So, you know, you go through a lot of those emotions with it's your dad. He's supposed to love you unconditionally, but there was a condition. And he was a great dad when that wasn't an issue. Um, and with me, it started from as far back as I can remember. So it was almost like it was normal. I didn't know any different. It started when I was like probably 5 years old. So I grew up with it, and it wasn't until I got older, and then the mixed messages, you need to be a virgin when you get married, but then not with him, I mean, so many mixed messages. And so the first thing you have to do is to acknowledge that I was scared. I even had some jealousy because when he took on another little girl, that was my daddy. Am I not good enough for my daddy? I was 6 or 7. I have to give myself a break. That would be a normal feeling for, I would think, any little girl that loved their dad. And you're scared, and then all of the emotional attachments, all the things they say to you to get you to be quiet, and as I got older and started backing off, then it was the direct embarrassing me in front of people, and so you take all of that in. So you have to acknowledge the emotions that went with that, and a lot of it I carried through my entire life. I mean, when we would go anywhere and have to be introduced, I would have my husband introduce me. I did not want to speak because I was afraid of having all the eyes on me. So then you have to validate, which is any little girl would feel that way, right? I was in survival mode. Being scared and all of that, it's fine. I mean, it's to be expected. And so you have to realize that, because a lot of times we don't realize that that is an emotion that most would feel. We just think, why did I feel like that? Why would I be jealous that he took on another little girl? It was my dad. He was the person that he loved, and he was a very loving dad. Aside from all of that, as far as anybody knew, in the town, we lived in a small town, he was a fantastic dad. He worked 3 jobs to support his family. So you have to acknowledge and you have to validate all of those emotions. And I think those are the first 2 steps to really being able to heal. And once you do all of that, you can look back and you can start forgiving. And for me, It was, now, honestly, I have no idea to know whether it's true or not, but you can change your own story. And my story is, more than likely, he was abused as a child. So he didn't know any different, and he didn't know how to break the cycle. So therefore, he just carried on with what he knew. And so I can forgive that. If I look at him as being a victim, then that kind of makes sense onto what went on. And then he taught one of my brothers, and so I deal with that. And it's just a vicious cycle, and I chose to break that cycle. So what step are we on? 1, 2, 3, the forgiveness, and then forgive myself for all of the emotions, and then forgive yourself for letting it carry through your life. You know, you've I let it control me for so long. You know, I let it control my actions, what I said, how I felt about myself. So you have to forgive yourself for all of that. You know, again, you do what you do to survive. In your mind, whatever that means to you or however you act. And for some people that have gone through that, they become very sexually active and then they beat themselves up for it. It's not their fault. We all process, like you said, Barbara, we process things differently. And there is no right or wrong. It is what it is. And you have to accept it. You have to acknowledge it. You have to validate it. You have to forgive yourself along with the situation or the person or whatever it is. And then you have to bring in the spirit. You know, you have to, which is just going within yourself and listening to your gut and not ignoring it, but ignoring all the other little chatter that's going on, because even with all of that, you may know, but you haven't gone far enough to say, I am worthy. I am worthy of unconditional love. You know, this all happened. A lot of people will blame God and say, why did he let this happen to me? And I believe he doesn't let it happen to you, but he walks you through it. And so he stays with you. I mean, look at the abuse he took when he was on earth, right? None of us have that, you know, and he forgave. And so who am I to hold on, you know? And then you have to work on, you can't just expect, just because you've worked on your emotion and stuff, you still have to move forward. You know, it's a journey, and you can't just eat whatever you want and expect, because I'm healing emotionally, that it's going to be all right. You can do everything in the world, but if you're not taking care of your mind, you're not taking care of your spirit, and you're not taking care of your body, it's not going to work. And that was the mistake I made. I took care of my body and I ignored the emotion. But if it had been reversed, if I had taken care of the emotion, but I ate whatever I wanted and I didn't exercise, I sat in front of the couch all day long, you know, I'm not helping myself. And I'm still in the exact same place to lower my immune system, where any chronic illness can take hold. So,
Wow. Yeah, I was writing down, but what I really loved, I mean, all those steps are wonderful, but the thing is, you have to forgive yourself. And I just want to kind of add to that. You have to, after that, you have to learn to love yourself first, because if
Mhm.
you don't love yourself, it's kind of difficult to do all the other steps,
Mhm.
because then you feel, you know, with what you went through with abuse and then the cancer. And like I said, me and you are like sisters right now, Susan,
Mhm.
because I've been through same thing. in that aspect of the sexual abuse part too. But you start feeling like you're not valued or you're not loved, or you feel like, why am I even, how could I even forgive myself? Or you start even blaming yourself. So you have to go inside yourself and say, no, I have to do all that crap through all the, I call them earthquakes and floods in your life. You have to see through that and say, no, I'm still me. I'm still important. I have to love me. And then after that, then you kind of forgive and all that stuff that comes out afterwards.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, you have to learn to shut off all of that chatter, all of that self-doubt and unworthiness, and really come into your own and know who you are and love yourself. And, and loving yourself too is a lot of people still do this today, and I tend to do it too, is when you're working, have a shut off time. Have some time to yourself. Take a day off. So many times we work, especially when we're entrepreneurs, we tend to work 7 days a week. You can't do that to yourself. You're not loving yourself. You're not honoring yourself. You have to give yourself some time just to be with yourself, to love on yourself, and to do something that makes you happy. Even all of this makes us happy, because we're helping others. And that's part of the healing too, is by helping others, you start healing yourself with whatever you're going through. And Barbara, it's funny you say that, that we're sisters with the cancer, and because of you, I joined Chemo's Buddies for Life. I saw you on a show with Misty Lane, and you
Yes.
mentioned the Chemo Buddies for Life, and I was like, oh, that's interesting. So I did the research, and so now I'm a chemo buddy. Yeah. Yeah. And see, that's the thing. And that's a very important program, because actually both of my cancers, but particularly the first one 20 years ago, your family loves you and they want to support you, but they don't know how. And I didn't have a support system. I met people who were going through the journey at the same time I was, but I didn't know anybody that had been through it to let me know it was going to be okay. So basically, I had to do it alone. And so when you mentioned Chemo Buddy, I thought, that is so perfect. That is such a great support system for anybody, to have somebody that's been through it that can again validate your emotions and let you. And you can be a little vulnerable. You don't have to be that strong, like for your family. You feel like you have to be strong for them, and so you never let your guard down. And inside, you are just dying inside. You're so scared. But you can't let the family see that, because then they start feeling bad, and then you start feeling worse. And, it's just a big thing. I just love that program. Love that program.
Yeah, that's one of the things that it is having support is such an amazing thing, because when you're going through something, you have everybody, like you just said, people want to support you. They're empathetic. They want to give from you, but until you have been through something yourself, there's that little that you don't quite know what they're going through.
Right.
Like, I didn't expect to be a widow at 60, and a friend of mine just lost her husband about 4 or 5 months ago. And the other day we were talking, and I said, well, when you start to feel this, she said, oh, I'm not feeling that yet. I said, well, you might. And if you do, let me know, because, you're just going to want to scream at the injustice of it all. And then the guilt will set in, that how can you be grateful that your husband has passed away? And it wasn't that I was grateful that he passed away, but I was grateful that he was out of suffering.
Right.
But there's still that there's that little sense of relief that, oh, it's over. But then it's like, how can you feel that? Well, because it is. It's a tangible thing. But until you've gone through it. And she said, yeah, I would just come home and I was just so angry with him. And I said, yeah, I know. Been there. And we had just such a great conversation about it, because she was going through where I was, after but I've been through it.
Right.
And she was beating herself up about the fact that she was forgetting stuff. And I went, I don't remember the first 2 years after David died. Don't worry about it. It's a hill of beans. It doesn't matter.
Right.
And she was like, oh, thanks, Barb. Because she was getting upset about it because she was forgetting stuff. I said, you're in the widow's fog. Don't worry about it. It's good. It's all good. You will get through it. And when you are, you'll know when you wake up from it.
Mm-hmm.
And she went, oh, okay, great. Thank you. Because I can tell you the day I woke up from it.
That's just so, see what you, Barbara, you showed example, how amazing it is to have like that partner, a support mechanism, a person to be that went through it and say, okay, I know. And they're really like, well, I don't know if I will feel that way. And you're in the back of your mind, you're like, they are, and they're going to need me. But so you're there to comfort them and say it's going to be okay.
Yeah.
So
right.
Yeah.
Because it's a stage. Because it's a stage. You're going to, it's like anything else. You go through the stages, and if you're not there yet, okay, but yeah, you will be.
Right.
So get with somebody who's already been there and done that and gone through it.
Mm-hmm. And with you, Barbara, I mean, you reinvented yourself over and over and over. You inspire me every day. I'm like, every time I see you doing something else, now you got the show, you got this, you got your coach. It's like,
just
I was like, look at this woman.
It's a process. It's a process. And yet I look at people that are so far, it's like, oh, brother, I can't. And it's like, yeah, but they've been doing it longer.
Yeah.
That's the only difference. Mm-hmm. They've been doing it longer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So any plan, because I know the time, this is such a good conversation, but I know timing too. So Susan, anything that you want to express to the listeners, to leave them any tips or just some wisdom for them?
Yeah, I think you have to, well, I know you have to, is stay positive, because what we think, we manifest. And honestly, that's, I believe, part of the reason that my cancer came back was not just because of the emotional. Well, it's part of the emotional, but because it had gone into the lymph node, and I wanted to prepare myself for when it would return, because we all know if it's in the lymph nodes, the chances are a lot greater. So when people would say you're through it, and I said, well, it's not if it will come back, it's when it will come back. And I told myself that for years. I thought I was preparing myself when actually I was manifesting that it was going to come back, because in my mind, that's what I told myself. And so I think it's really important we be very, very careful what we think and what we tell ourselves.
It's that mindset. Yeah.
It's that mindset. It's totally that mindset. And, and so that's another step, is to be careful what you think, what you tell yourself, all of that chatter that goes on. We have to be very aware. So awareness is a very big, just be aware of your surroundings, be aware what you're thinking, be aware what you're projecting onto others. Because what we feel and how we act, a lot of times that comes across, other people are seeing that, even when you don't know. Like, Barbara, you said that Barbara too was inspiring you every day, and whether she knew that or not, I think we all are inspiring people without realizing it. You don't have to know who you're inspiring. Just know that you are inspiring somebody by how you are handling a certain situation. And you don't want to be that person that is handling it so badly that you're not helping somebody else. I think our big purpose in life is to help each other and support each other, and just to get through, and not and realize that whatever you're going through, it's for a reason. If it's nothing else, to be able to help somebody else to go through it.
Awesome. Oh, this has been awesome. This has been so awesome, Susan. Thank you so much for coming on. I just wanted to make sure I put her website down below if anybody wants to reach Susan. She is a coach and, a mentor, and you can tell, just her talking about her story and the tips and the journey, that you will get so much from Susan, and she can help you so much in the areas, of trauma. I mean, she's been there, she understands, and she can walk you through it.
Mm-hmm.
And you see there's hope because we're here on the Happiness Show with smiles.
It doesn't even have to be trauma, Barbara. As children, we're taught to hold our emotions. If you're going to cry, go to your room, or stop crying, or an angry child, they're not allowed to let those emotions go. The parents like, I'm going to give you something to cry about. Any of those things. We're teaching our children to shut down their emotions, and that's the last thing we need to be teaching them. We need to teach them they can have these emotions, but there's proper ways of expressing it, but not to shut it down.
Yeah. And I just want to add to that before we sign off. Like you said, Susan, I'm glad you brought that up. As children, we go through, because everybody goes through their different life with their parents, and they say certain things. And a lot of, we believe our parents. So we grow up with that and then we take it on. And sometimes it's not really the right thing. And you're talking about dealing with emotions. And I think that more for the men, for the boys that grow up, is having a harder time sometimes than the women at times, because, they say, be strong. You can't cry. You can't show your emotions. And I always talk to a lot of men, regarding that. And I'd be begging and pleading, you need to let it out. Just because if you cry, we're not going to look at you any differently. You have those just like we do as women. And they're like, no, my dad told me never to do that. So they have it in them, and they have all this stuff inside. Right. And then what happens, they let it out a different way, which sometimes is not the right way.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
It can cause a lot of anger. It's what was that saying? Real men don't cry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They even got songs about it. I mean, it's just always in their head, So it's okay to shed a tear here and there, and say I got to deal with this.
So therapeutic to do that. Yeah, you have to let it go.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, Susan, again. Thank you, Barbara. As always, you bring the best.
Oh, this was fun.
You bring the best. And we had a lot of good people. Carol was on here. Let's see, she has another. Oh. Yeah, Carolyn said, thank you for your story, Susan. Yes, it was powerful. Powerful. So people, look at this show, our show, the Happiness Show, and reach out to Susan. And we always want to make sure that we support each other. That's the biggest thing, is supporting and collaborating. So, I think Carol said something else. Oh, yeah. Yeah, because she was talking, I know one of her buddies passed away with cancer. So,
yeah.
It's there. But so we're going to bring you back, Susan. We always want to tell we got to bring everybody back.
I love that. There's so much area to cover in there.
Yes.
That's exactly it.
Yeah.
It is just such an untapped, and until, and one of my favorite sayings is that you do not know what you don't know until somebody, it's like a little light is from them comes out, and it's like, oh, it's like those little aha moments. And then you can go on and you can explore it and see what it means for you. But if you don't hear other stories, that's why stories are so important. So for any of you out there right now, this is my little plug for today. If you have a story that you're wondering whether you should share it or not, if you have even one little inkling, get it out there, because there is somebody out there that is waiting for what you have in here. And get it out there. They need to hear your story and the way that you tell it. So,
and if you're in a different place in your healing, don't beat yourself up. If
exactly.
you're doing affirmations but they're not sticking, don't beat yourself up. You're just not there yet. And that's where, again, the support system to get you to that place where
exactly
all of that can stick.
Yes.
we all have to just quit beating ourselves up.
Right. I always use the rose analogy. Some people with the rose, everybody knows a beautiful flower a rose is, but it starts out as a seed. So it's under the ground, doesn't know what it's doing. Then you get a little bit out of the ground, you start to see the little shoot. Well, then it gets to be bigger, and then it starts getting leaves, and then it gets a bud, and then the bud starts to open, and only then you get a full flavored, just beautiful rose that still has a thorn. Roses have thorns.
Right.
So you know what? But it is a beautiful flower. You are a beautiful flower in the making, and you might be just a seed right now, and that's okay.
Right.
But
and
you're in just
time.
Yeah. It's like,
and you know what? Just to add to that, now you're talking about the thorn. So I'm going to say this: so don't let your thorns stop you from being so beautiful, because those thorns just remind you of how you went through your growth status as a rose.
I love that.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Great minds think alike. Oh, I'm telling you, this is awesome.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, so we got to bring you back, Susan. Thank you so much. We appreciate you and just being so vulnerable and sharing your wisdom with us. I know a lot of people, Joe, we had a lot of people on doing comments, so I know that you're getting a lot of value too. So that's awesome. And Barbara, anything else before we sign on?
No. Hey, welcome. And you know what? Come back next week, because you know what? It is your time to shine.
Love that.
It's your time to shine. Let's get it
She
out there.
said it. Your time to shine. Bye, everybody.